tonight. It's not finalized until after the minutes are approved at the next common council meeting. So in a sense, we have a month to decide. So that's what I'm doing tonight. If it doesn't pass, I'm not going to be upset. I think it just, my ability as an individual, as a separate alderman on this common council, I have the ability to do these things. That's what I'm doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Alderman Sitkowitz.
Sure, thank you, and I'll be brief. I spoke at length at the committee of the whole when we addressed this last month, and then again at the council itself. I was, obviously I spoke in favor of censure of Alder Zakala, but I didn't want to go as far as removal from personnel for one basic reason, and I gave a few, but there were a lot of basic reasons. The last time we censured an alder, we removed that individual from both standing committees. And that was because when presented with an opportunity to apologize and show remorse, that individual essentially doubled down and did neither. I did have the opportunity to accompany Alder Zakala to the fire department on one occasion for two separate meetings with the executive group of the union and the union itself, and then witnessed Alder Zakala apologize here in general. So I did see true remorse, and that's why, again, I didn't support the removal from personnel, but ultimately voted with the council because I thought it was the right thing to do of speaking as one voice. So if this passes again for or for the amendment, I'll be looking to support the amendment, but if it fails, I'll, go along with the council on this. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Bolt next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that we must look at as well is we understand we voted, and I was one to vote for censorship, but Alderman Zakala, as a fellow NCO, he took ownership for what he did. He went ahead, he went and apologized to the people at hand. He went ahead and apologized to both the union, and unlike many people, we learn from our mistakes. He did. He took ownership for it, and I commend him for that, because many people would fight and resist. So if it is the common council's consensus that we will then allow him to still sit on that committee, I would be all for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bolt. I have Alderman Reckelberg next.
If you recall, I offered a compromise at the last meeting. In fact, I spoke up to make sure that everybody understood the voting on the amendment and so on and so forth. If Alderman Bry would have had an amendment that corresponded with what I had suggested, I would certainly support it, which would basically say that he's off the personnel committee only until this next election, not his next election, but the next one coming up in April. So he would have been off, but he could be reappointed on the next go-around. But since he wants to basically strip that sentence, which then never stripped or removed him from personnel for any length of time, I cannot support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Cummings next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too was unaware of this topic coming up until just now as well. That being said, I did have the opportunity a bunch of times to go back and rewatch it. Once again, I am on the personnel committee. I was sitting next to Alderman Zakala when that did happen. One thing I did notice, leading up to that, it was just, I don't know if the topic at hand just struck a particular nerve. If he's having a bad day prior to that, once again, you do got to remind ourselves, we are humans just like everybody else, right? There are things that obviously sometimes do strike that piece of it. When I went back and looked at it, I also don't believe that there was any intent to physically harm anybody. I think it was just something that just in that moment just came out. Obviously, he realizes it wasn't right as far as what he said. He did all of the things that you would expect a good person. I was, last meeting, I did, stand up and say that, I do believe Alderman Zakala is a good person, wholeheartedly, and still have not second-guessed that statement at all. I do like the fact that, as any good person would do, that they recognize they made a mistake and did actions to go and correct that mistake, to include going to the people that were directly offended and apologize and explain that they've learned from that and went forth. He apologized then at the meeting when we discussed all of this, given the opportunity. I am a man of faith as well, and I do believe in second chances. I would love to tell you that I was born and never have made a mistake, but that would be an outright lie. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, and if I didn't get a second chance after doing the right thing after that, I would not be sitting up here. So I would be prepared to support a motion to reinstate. He did sit out the last personnel meeting, was not here, obviously, for that. Didn't cause any issues after the decision, didn't personally send emails, calls, did any of that stuff to voice displeasure, just basically silently rode off in the night, per se. But there again, I believe that him and the rest of the council can learn from this, and we can all be better after the fact. That's it.
Thank you. I have Alderman Bry next.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I was going to call you chairman. I'm sorry. That's tomorrow night. I guess two things. Number one is the resolution, regardless if this amendment passes, the resolution will still remain intact, that Alderman Sakala is censured by the Common Council. That's a fact. It's going to stay. It's not going anywhere. And number two, I guess, and it concerns me that, and I've seen it on other issues as well, that we get this, well, this is the first I've heard of it. I couldn't do this. I'm sure our assistant city attorney would think that if I sent out an email saying that I plan on doing this, and I know there's that fine line of that would be a potential violation of our Wisconsin open meetings law when I start announcing what I intend to do at a common council meeting. And it also opens up the ability for discussion. So that's why this isn't a surprise. I mean, we have the ability to do this. It rarely happens, but we do have the ability to do this. So just want to make that point clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bry. Any further discussion on the motion to amend the resolution? Seeing none, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Yes, okay. So can we see the ayes, please? Bolt, Bry, Sitkowitz, Beeman, and Cummings. And the nays are Vanderkin, Kaderabek, Reckelberg, and Schley. One abstention, so the motion does carry 5-4-1. So that is now the resolution. All right, we'll take up the other, let's see here, we'll move to Committee of the Whole, and that's under Finance, right? Oh yeah, we still have to approve the minutes, that's right, it's technically. Sorry, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
Motion second, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you for that reminder. Now we'll move to Committee of the Whole and Council President Steve Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has our documents.
We have document 229, which is the sale of city property at 4221 Calumet Ave. Committee returns same, recommending to approve the sale of the property and authorize staff to finalize the details of the sale.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Wish to do what she just said. Move to do what she just said.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Document 250 is the report of the Special Events Committee recommending approval for a variety of events requiring council action. Committee returns same, recommending approval.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move to approve the report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Anything else, Council President Sakala?
No, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our business.
Thank you. We move then to the Finance Committee and Alderman Jim Bry as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has our documents.
We have document 92, which is approval of the quadricycle pedal pub license and routes from Manitour Peddlers LLC with updated routes. Committee returns same, recommending approval.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
For the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Vanderkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I pulled this off. I debated this. I don't think this is a great idea for the city to be doing with the quadricycles, especially looking at it and doing some research about them. The top speed is about 5 miles per hour. Do we really want that congesting the city even more so? I mean, this probably would have worked if the streets were still one-way, but now that they're two-way, that's just to slow down traffic. And not to mention, you're going to have a 5 mile per hour vehicle with a top speed going on a state highway and over a bridge with alcohol. That just doesn't seem like a safe idea to me. So I'm definitely against both of these. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Vanderkin. Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an incredibly great idea, and I can't wait to be a patron as long as I don't have to pedal. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess if I do participate, I will pedal, but I respect you, Alderman Vanderkin. I mean, you made some very good points, but you're also, if you look at the map, there are some details in that they are going to be on specific roads. So they'll be rarely crossing, I guess, State Highway 42 or any other state highways. You're right. I guess it'll be interesting to a point, but I also know the city of Manitowoc, which is what, I don't know, 15 times the size of Manitowoc, as Milwaukee, I'm sorry, has these, other Green Bay has them, other communities are doing this as well. It's on a year-to-year basis. If we're having problems, we can certainly look at them and address them, or we can, I guess, basically outlaw them again. But I'm willing to give them at least a summer's chance, so thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bry. Alderman Schley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all due respect, once again, I did do some research on this, and I made phone calls and talked to public safety officials in other cities, most of them larger than Manitowoc, but nothing the size of Milwaukee, and was able to find no record of accidents or incidents involving these vehicles. Voting against it, knowing what I know, would be simply prohibiting a vendor from doing business in the city of Manitowoc, and I am pro-business if nothing else, so I will be voting to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the people that are doing this did come to the Room Tax Commission, and they laid out their business plan on what they intend to do and how things would work with it. They did petition the Room Tax Commission for a grant, which was denied, but their business plan is actually quite solid. And what their intentions are and what they plan on doing, I think would tie in very well with our tourism. And I really don't think it would interfere with traffic all that much at all. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Sakala. Any further discussion? Alderman Reckelberg.
I had my reservations about it, but went along with it, basically with the understanding that if we find problems with it, we've got 1 year and we can revisit it and either correct the problems or put a kibosh to it. It was only with that ability to look at it on an annual basis and either say yay or nay. I still think there will be problems, and I hope not on 8th Street where you really only have one, in some of their maps that they showed, they're crossing the 8th Street Bridge. But we'll hear from the public if they think that's not right, I guess. So I conditionally am approving it myself, but so be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. So the motion carries 9-1. Alderman Vanderkin voting no.
Document 93 is approval of the quadricycle paddle pub license and routes from Big Hitter Worldwide LLC. Committee returns same, recommending approval.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-1. Alderman Vanderkin voting no.
Document 187 is a statement of the Board of Canvassers relative to the February 21st, 2023 spring primary election for alderperson in District 3. Committee returns same, recommending to accept and place on file.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
And then the other item was going to just go to finance.
Okay, so we have one item that's going to go to finance. Citizen request for wheel tax reimbursement.
Yes, we'll be discussing. And if I may continue, I guess that brings us to the next, that's all we have tonight. But our next meeting will be Tuesday, April 4th, for 5:30 PM, probably in one of the conference rooms down here, because I think we have an election day that day, and the
do.
city clerk's office will be using the council chambers, but we will be meeting somewhere, either this conference room or the one on the west wing. So that's all I have,
Just like
Mr.
the
Mayor.
good old days.
The good old days, yes. So we actually had a conference
Yeah.
room. I'll have to find the Salvation Army ringing bell.
Yeah.
Budget season?
Budget.
All right, thank
Thank
you, Alderman Bry. We'll move to the Personnel Committee, and Alderman Eric Sitkowitz is chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has our documents this evening.
Document 167 is a request to approve recommended revisions to the social media policy. Committee returns same, recommending approval.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Sitkowitz.
Just to highlight, one of the major changes is about administrators to the pages, and that the city's retaining the ownership of the pages. So we've had some issues in the past of not being able to access certain pages. So this is helpful to clean that up and make sure that the city's pages or stayed the city's pages.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Document 184 is a request to make contingent job offer to firefighter candidates in process of obtaining needed certifications. Committee returns same, recommending approval.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Document 242 is a charter ordinance to amend section 2.070 of the municipal code regulating indefinite tenure for appointments of city officers. Committee returns same, recommending to adopt the ordinance.
Council, your pleasure on this ordinance.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Sitkowitz.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, and for those that had the opportunity to go through and read that and see the changes, it actually just codifies what we've done historically in the city. So it kind of updates the language to current practice.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I do believe this requires a 2/3 vote or 3/4 because it is a charter ordinance. I believe, well, we'll fight that battle if it gets to that point. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think
There we go.
unanimous will
I
work.
think we got at least 2/3. Motion carries unanimously.
Document 243 is a resolution to hire city clerk administrative support specialist related to elected officials, department heads, or supervisory personnel. Committee returns same, recommending adopting the resolution.
Council, your pleasure on this resolution.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Sitkowitz.
Just standard procedure when we do have a relationship employee. So this does require a 2/3 or 3/4 vote.
I thought this one was roll call.
Is it just roll call?
Roll call.
I don't have my Robert's rules in front of me, so I know it's something special.
This one's roll call. yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But majority. Yep, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Bolt,
Aye.
Vanderkin,
Aye.
Katarabik. Aye. Bry,
Aye.
Breckelberg,
Aye.
Sikowitz,
Aye.
Beeman,
Aye.
Schley,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Sikala.
Aye. Thank you.
Unanimous
Motion
approval.
carries unanimously. Anything else, Alderman Sitkowitz?
That concludes our business tonight. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is the first Monday in April, which is the 3rd, normally held in here, being that they set this up for central count, location to be determined.
Another one of those rooms.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll move to the Public Infrastructure Committee. Alderman Mike Cummings is chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has the documents.
We have document 172, which is an ordinance to permit the sale of fermented malt beverages in city parks. Committee returns same, recommending to adopt the ordinance.
Council, your pleasure on this ordinance.
Move for the adoption of the committee report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those, oh, sorry, hold, there was some. Alderman Reckelberg.
Yeah, one of my constituents spoke at public input, and he was correct on everything except Friday. It was actually Saturday night when I sat down and went through all of the things that were coming up for the meeting. And the reason I waited until Saturday night is I usually find out if I do it earlier, I show up to a meeting and find other things on the agenda that I didn't get to see before if I do it too early. Knowing this, and believe it or not, the election that you mentioned is coming up on the 4th. And although I have nobody running against me, I still go out and I put little slips on doorknobs just to make sure people understand I'm interested in where I stand and that I'm there to represent them. And the other day, I don't know how many homes I visited, but quite a few of them came to the door while I was leaving. So I went back and handed them my little blurb. And I asked them, I said, Monday I'm going to be asked to vote on a resolution or ordinance, and I explained to them what it was. I said, as I am there to represent you, how do you feel on this issue? Should the city get involved with this? And whether it was a male or a female, young or old. I did not have one person respond to me that they thought this was a good idea or it's anything that the city should get involved. I made a number of calls. I want to thank publicly our police chief, who did some searching for me as I was having problems contacting a number of people here at city. The chief got back to me with as much information as he had, but he admitted that there definitely should be more because of my questions, and he couldn't answer. Because of that, I would hope that we would deny this request because of the liability that it would push onto the city where, and I know, why would we want to take on a responsibility of this nature and open ourselves up to lawsuits if something were to happen? Somebody goes out drunk, gets in an accident, and I know the attorney will probably point to something in the statute that says, well, yeah, but they're kind of limited to what they can get from us because we're government. Well, I can name you a number of judges and attorneys that'll say, that's okay, we know how to crack that corporate veil and we'll get the millions that we want, despite what it shows. And I just give you the example about on the West Coast with, well, I got my money in the bank and they're only insured to 250, but guess what? I'm getting my $1 million anyway. So with that and the fact that if, from what I have been able to gather, if this is something that should take place in a city park, let's say we're having some kind of a doings, the 4th of July celebration or whatever, there's nothing to say that the park department or some other organization in City Hall cannot go out for bids or requests for proposals to the private sector and say, here, we would like to set this beer garden up and or whatever, you give us a proposal. We, in that proposal, are not liable because it's another organization that's doing it, and we just get 10% or 15% or whatever of the gross. If you're that worried about getting money, it can be done without putting the liability on the city. So with the private sector concerns representing my district, who nobody that I've talked to, in fact, my phone was ringing off the hook, so much so that when the police chief did call me back, I had to get out of the shower to take his call. I hope nobody supports this. And if you think it's worth its while and you cannot vote this down today, I would then move to table it because I've got so many questions that nobody's answered yet. Thank you.
Is that a motion or not?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to have my say on it, hoping that it'll get voted down.
Okay, just making sure. Alderman Bolt is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm part of the Public Safety Committee the Public Infrastructure Committee that went ahead and approved this. But in looking at it, I'm all for during our special events, selling beverages in the city parks. However, I too do not like the fact that our city employees or officers would in fact be selling the beverages. To having taken part in fundraisers in the past and the liability, I don't want to see us as a city and a council be responsible for that type of behavior and leaning and relying on someone else to do the right thing. I know I voted for it the first time, but I will not support it this time.
Thank you, Alderman Bolt. Alderman Bry is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get some very interesting, discussion here, and I wish Dan or can't think of his name. Kurt was here to discuss, but I'm also a member of the Public Infrastructure Committee, and I supported the committee. I'm going to support it yet tonight. Number one is, as was mentioned by Alderman Bolt, it's not going to be like we're going to have a bar or a tavern set up in our city parks. It's just going to be for special events. So it's, essentially, and Metro, I'm using Metro Jam as an example, but Metro Jam is run by the JCs for their bar portion. So, but it's events like that. So it's not going to be like an everyday event. And number two is, and I see it, look around this common council, and most of us probably remember this, the city used to have a city picnic down in Silver Creek Park that was run by the city of Manitowoc, which dispensed alcohol, which was dispensed by city employees. So we've done this in the past. It's not like we're going to set up a bar that's going to be open 2 o'clock or I'm sorry, what is it, 7 a.m. in the morning till 2 p.m. at night? 2 a.m., I'm sorry. It's for special events. And as like with anything, if there's problems, we can certainly look at them and readdress them. I don't see the big outcry right now. We've done this in the past. When I worked at wastewater, I was a summer employee. I actually served beer because you had to be a legal age to serve beer at that time. So I was actually old enough to serve beer down there under the auspices of city ownership. So let's go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bry. Alderman Vanderkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely do not support this. If we want to talk about being pro-business, why are we competing with the businesses here in Manitowoc? It just doesn't seem that, this doesn't make sense. If we're in direct competition with the taverns in this city, we're in conflict of interest with our businesses. That doesn't make any sense to why we would go and sell alcohol, even if it does have a positive revenue stream on our budget. It doesn't make any sense if we're trying to be pro-business and trying to compete with our taverns. It doesn't make any sense to me. I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Schlein next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm directing this question to our Assistant City Attorney because in all deference to the folks who've shown opposition so far, we're not experts on liability, and we have one here. So I guess the first question I want to ask, I'm reading directly off of this piece of legislation. It says pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, is this like a piece of boilerplate legislation that we're writing in here because it's a Wisconsin statute and we can't really overrule a Wisconsin statute? Is that why that's in here? Or part two of this question, is there a specific reason other than compliance that this is being brought up and added to this?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alderman Schley. The statute, and I just, humor me here, reads, the sale of fermented malt beverages in any public park operated by a county or municipality. Fermented malt beverages shall be sold by officers of employees of the county or municipality under an ordinance, resolution, rule, or regulation enacted by that government body. And it relates to a larger structure of statute that waives fees and waives licenses. So what this will allow the city to do is, rather than have two fundraisers where the city would have to get licenses for what they were going to do anyway, now we don't have to do that. It removes that barrier. So that was how it was explained to me when the question was brought to me as far as, hey, how can we do this without all this red tape? I said, well, this is how. This statute, it applies directly.
Okay, so it's being enacted to eliminate red tape, that I understand. Looking down further into paragraph B, it says that except where a person has obtained possession of fermented malt beverages from the holder of a Class B license authorized from the sale of such beverages at such park. So if we're going to allow people who already have Class B licenses at events to sell in the park, doesn't that open us up to a certain amount of liability too, even because we're giving them tacit permission to do this? Could it? I should say, could that?
Could it? Yes.
Okay, so in other words, we're not really creating additional liability above and beyond what we already have.
I would disagree with that sentiment only to the extent that it's a very small amount, and it has to do with gross negligence with over-serving alcohol. Okay. And again, the liability will be rather low because we are a city, municipality. We are capped, and I believe when I looked at this that any as long as it's not gross negligence, we're covered under CIVNIC.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Sitkowitz and then Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions, because I was a little confused after Alder Schley's question and answer was about the red tape. So is this to make it easier for individuals, fewer wild events?
The latter. where the city sells things?
Yeah, so like.
But yes, then, yes, of course.
Soda.
That's my understanding, yes.
So where's the outrage?
No wine. No wine. Seriously, we're not selling, you can't sell wine.
Well, you can be outraged now because the city clerk informed me that wine is not included in this list. So, yes, just for clarification. All right, I have Alderman Sakala, then Cummings, and Alderman Reckelberg. Do you want to get in the queue? Okay, yep, so Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The attorney answered most of my questions, but I do want to add, Alder Sikowitz makes some very valid points. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Cummings.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, with this discussion, it's great that we're having a discussion. I'm glad that we're having it. With that, a couple of just comments just on what was already talked about. First off, one of them about not being aware of this until whenever, and it's being held secret and all that stuff. That is officially false, just because everybody here should know that all the committee stuff comes to the city council. So realistically, we should be looking at the committee stuff, and this was on this last month's committee's agenda, and it is public for the committee's agenda and also taped as well. So if you're not in attendance, you can go back and watch it. So that would be perpetually false by saying, you know, maybe you might not have personally been aware, but that's just because you didn't go back and do the homework ahead of time. Second of all, the reason why this did come up, just so we're all aware and on the same page, it was initially because on July 22nd and 23rd, officially, this was actually 2 months ago already, we started talking about this. The Scenic Shore 150 Bike Tour is a cycling event put on by the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which travels from Mequon to Sturgeon Bay with their overnight stopping point in Manitowoc. This is the 31st year of this event, with Manitowoc being the midpoint since its inception. This is the first year the event will be held on city property. The expected outcome is 1,500 riders. The event is expected to raise over $2 million towards the mission of LSS, which once again stands for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So they came to us knowing we were going to bring 1,500 riders to Manitowoc. They wanted to have it in a park. They wanted to still be able to go and camp overnight, so we actually modified hours in the park so that way they could camp overnight for the midway point and then still allow for them to obviously enjoy their experience in Manitowoc while they're camping. So that's the reason why this came up for us to be able to do it, and I'm glad Alderman Bry talked about past history as well, and that's where the idea stemmed from, because it's something we've done in the past. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Reckelberg next.
Well, like I had mentioned before, I found out about it Saturday because when I have looked at other committee meetings and things like that, right after, I usually have not found the material on the computer. So, I mean, I got a hold of the information as soon as I could, where I knew that everything would be there and not missing. So that explains why I saw it Saturday. With respect to we've done that in the past. I was thinking about it when my wife and I first moved down here 30-some years ago. I remember the city council, so-called city picnic out at the park. And I recall that there was beer at least sold there and stuff. I did not realize that it was the city's doing, but so be it. I mean, I do know it did take place years and years ago, but to my knowledge, it wasn't taking place anymore. So when this item came up, that is something that, like I said, when I went door to door with my little campaign information, I asked the public, how did they feel about that? With respect to the comment about, well, we sell other things. Well, yeah, candy, popcorn, soda, water at the, so on and so forth. That's fine. You're right. They do have a problem with the alcoholic beverages being promoted by the city. They have no problem with the candy at the, say, the swimming pool or the popcorn or whatever. But I also heard, true or not, is that they want to basically set up a concession out by the pool so that they can garner money at the pool area somewhere. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but
There's a concession stand at the aquatic.
beer, no. Is there beer being sold or alcohol being sold at the pool? Well, there you go.
But you said concessions, that's why I'm correct.
Alderman Reckelberg, you have the floor still.
That is the contention, is that the city is involved with promoting malt beverages, if you will, or whatever is composed of that. That's what my district, like I said, nobody that I've made contact with, and I've had a lot of them. And if there's no problem handling other organizations, allowing them to do that, now why do we have to put it on the city? If there's a little paperwork on that organization's behalf to make it legal, so be it. They're doing it now. Why do we have to do something to get involved any more than what we are? As far as filling out insurances, I remember at the county, I was responsible for the county's liability insurance for 30-some years. Every year I had to fill out an application, and on that application, it says, are you doing anything different than what you did before? And the county's insurance is no different than CIMIC or whatever our acronym is. We had the Wisconsin Municipal Mutual, which was run by counties, and every time I checked the little box that said, yeah, we're doing something different, I got a phone call from the company saying, well, we don't cover that. Or we'll cover it, but we're going to raise your premium. And I've got all these questions that I have not been able to get answered. So I would move to table this until we can get a lot of answers, because I hope other alders would have questions like, is our liability insurance going to go up? The attorney says, no, it's not necessarily going to go up, but it only covers it'll cover us unless it's gross negligence. Okay, I'd like to know what does gross negligent mean, because an attorney's going to go out there and say, no, that's gross negligence. So I've got a lot.
Is that a motion to table?
I do make a motion to table then, because I'm afraid it's going to go through otherwise.
Understood. There is no discussion for a motion to table, so that is the motion to table. Is there a second? Second by Cotter Robeck. All those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Can we see the ayes, please? Bolt, Vanderkin, Reckelberg, Beeman, and Cotter Robeck. And the noes are Bry, Sitkowitz, Schley, Cummings, and Sakala. It's a tie vote. I will cast my vote no. So the motion fails to table. We are back to discussion, and I have Alderman Reckelberg. You still have the floor, otherwise I'm moving to Alderman Vanderkin.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. I had my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Vanderkin is next.
Yeah, when we talk about selling concessions, I mean, that's a completely different story when you're talking about, fermented malt beverages and alcohol. And one of the things I get from constituents all the time is the city constantly promoting alcohol. I mean, you can just see that when we just passed the pedal bikes. It's no different. That the difference between that and the soda is that alcohol has way more negative externalities. Look at this from a purely economic perspective. I mean, it increases in substance abuse, homelessness, mental health issues. I mean, why is the city getting involved in that and promoting that? That doesn't make sense to me, and I definitely will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Schley next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've been listening to the discussion here, the question came up in my mind: how many other municipalities have embraced this? Through the miracle of Google, I stopped counting at 50. 50 Wisconsin municipalities who are using this, and gosh, they don't seem to have any problem with it at all. It sounds like reasonable and customary to me. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sitkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only reason I brought up concessions was because the original argument was that it was selling things at the city level was anti-business. So I just wanted to make sure that that's not the argument now, it's just anti-beer, because we're okay selling concessions. So I don't understand that argument. It doesn't make any sense to me, so I would ask that you call the question.
Okay, the question is being called on the ordinance. So all those in favor of the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Can we see the ayes, please? So Sakala, Cummings, Schley, Beeman, Sitkowitz, Bry, and Cotter Robeck. And the noes are Reckelberg, Vanderkin, and Bolt. So the ordinance carries 7-3. We will take the other items for public infrastructure.
Document 245 is a resolution approving the 3-year Harbor Development Statement of Intentions for 2023 through 2025. Committee returns same, recommending to adopt the resolution.
Council, your pleasure on this resolution.
Move to accept the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Yeah, Alderman Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. From my understanding with this, the intentions are, we have to declare what the intentions are. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to do them, but if we never declare them, then we can't do them. So, so this is a pure formality to make sure that we can do stuff in that window for it.
And you do declare.
That's correct.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Anything else, Alderman Cummings?
That concludes our business, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting will be April 5th at 5:30, and I'm hoping that everything will be cleared out after the election.
Gosh, I hope so.
If not,
Should be good.
to be determined, otherwise in this chambers.
Thank you. We'll move to the Public Safety Committee and Alderman Bill Schley as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has the documents.
Document 219 is an automatic aid agreement between the City of Manitowoc and the City of Two Rivers. Committee returns same, recommending to approve the agreement.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move to approve the agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Document 246 is an ordinance to amend section 10.390 of the municipal code to remove parking in the 900 block of Marshall Street. Committee returns same, recommending to adopt the ordinance.
Council, your pleasure on this ordinance.
Recommend to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank Alderman Schley and the Public Safety Committee for acting so quickly on the request from actually, it's not one of my constituents, but the owner of the building, the old Schulander building, Mr. Chase, had requested it. The pictures I supplied, especially that one parking spot between the county's parking lot and his driveway and his driveway, you could barely even fit a moped in there. So thank you very much. I'm sure he'll appreciate it as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Document 247 is an ordinance to amend and repeal portions of section 10.390 of the municipal code regulating parking on South 10th Street. Committee returns same, recommending to adopt the ordinance.
Council, your pleasure on this ordinance.
Recommend to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Schley.
Boy, nobody is happier to see this on the agenda than me. Well, I'm sure some of the others here have gotten as many angry phone calls as I have about the intersection and of 10th and Washington Street. This is going to alleviate a lot of the traffic problems at that intersection. It was unforeseen, and like some things that have come up with the new two-way streets, and I am really glad to support this.
Thank you, Alderman Schley. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Anything else, Alderman Schley?
No, there is not. Thank you. Our next meeting will be April 10th at 5:30 PM right here in this chamber.
Thank you. We will take the Plan Commission documents.
Mr. Mayor, if it's all right, could we take up 0146 first, the document? Because the other one would have to be taken off the table. That's the U.S. Army Reserve document. Could we take that up first is what I'm trying to say?
Oh, okay, sure, yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Document 146 is the U.S. Army Reserve Center, Silver Creek Park, request to extend lease located at 3125 South 10th Street. Pursuant to State Statute 62.23, Parent 5, matters referred to City Plan Commission. The Plan Commission returned same, recommending to approve the request to extend the term of the lease with city staff negotiating and finalizing all the details of said lease.
Council, your pleasure on this report.
Move for the adoption of the committee's report, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
And then,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, at this time, I make a motion to remove from the table document 22-1082 PC 25-2022, the Brian and Laura Stecker petition for detachment of territory from the city of Manitowoc pursuant to 66.0227, located at 7121 Dutch Road.
Okay, there's a motion to remove from the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Council, your pleasure on this report.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I'll make a motion to adopt the committee's report, to approve, I guess, the detachment and instruct the city attorney or whatever to do the due diligence to do it. So, thank you.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Reckelberg. Discussion. Alderman Bryce?
I'm sorry. Thank you. I guess there's nothing more to say. You know, we discussed this for the last several months. We have, all the facts are before you and stuff, and we'll go from here. And I guess tonight will be the vote. Just remember, it'll require a 3/4 vote, which in a sense would be 8 members of the common council have to support it to actually allow the detachment. So with that, I hold my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Schley and then Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been back and forth on this one myself after conversations with our assistant city attorney and realizing that the city has no legal recourse to compel these folks to come back into the city once, when and if these services come to them, and being told that it does, leave the city open for future action by other people in similar situations, and the loss to the city could be substantial. I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Alderman Sakala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue with me on this, and I was a big supporter of the Steckers up until a land purchase that took place about a month ago, when it basically turned their lot into more or less a 60-acre lot. And yet to split it in half and keep half in the city and then detach the other half, that I have problems with. And so for that, as it stands right now, I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sitkowitz.
In the same from the last times we discussed it, I believe that this council should look towards growing our city and not contracting our city. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too had made comments last meeting as far as not being able to support it. Those comments still do stand a month later, essentially. So one of the arguments that I didn't bring up last month was, I know a lot of my fellow older people here mentioned that there was a promise that if and when city services did get brought forth to that residence, that they promised they'd come back into the city. And unfortunately, things happen. People's lives changed. They could sell their property, and then at that point, then that promise is null and void. So with that, I don't think we should work off of promises. We should work off of facts. And the facts are, if we vote for this, we're going to lose land with the possibility of it never coming back again. Plain and simple. That's it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'd just like to also just again reiterate staff's position from the very beginning was they did not recommend approval of this due to several factors, as we've discussed many times. I would just like to reiterate that from the beginning, and that it does require a 3/4 vote. And there are also other avenues that can be taken, like a public referendum, if the petitioners choose to do that, or other avenues. So again, just wanted to reiterate what was been said from the beginning of staff's recommendation. Alderman Bolt.
Just making sure that I'm clear, Mr. Mayor, thank you, that when the vote comes, it's to vote to allow them to detach, correct?
Correct. Yep, that was the motion by Alderman Bry. So yeah, a yes vote would be in support of detachment, a no vote would be in non-support of detachment. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then all those in favor? Opposed?
No.
Oh,
Can we see the ayes, please? Bolt, Vanderkin, Cotterabek, Bry, Reckelberg, and Beeman. And the noes are Sitkowitz, Schley, Cummings, and Sekula. So the motion fails, not getting the 3/4 vote. 6-4. All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.